Chapter 30. The Battle at Mosh Tree. Some of them hit the floor. Most ran for the exit. There was only one exit. Mosh Tree had a lot of fire hazards, but only two doors, being the entrances and exits, was a pretty bad one. Luckily for the humans, being in a panicking crowd with monkeys and apes, they can panic and run up the walls. So not everyone was running on the ground. Bad traffic jam at the door. Tony, Perry, and Elle hit the ground. They looked up and tried to see what was shooting, but they saw nothing. "We need to get the fuck out of here," Perry yelled. Back in the War Store cockpit, they watched on the main screen as Mosh Tree was ripped apart with machine guns. They started to see a few bodies escaping from the inside and crawling on the outside of Mosh Tree. The captain was getting bored. "Enough playing around. Use the big gun. Nuke that shithole." Apes and monkeys scattered inside Mosh Tree. The ground was now littered with dozens of dead and injured. Jimmy ignored the chaos, walked across the stage. "Aw man, aw man." He leaned over Axel's body, looking into the sky, and with his miniature high voice, yelled, "No!" as the camera looked down on him and pulled back. The three humans scurried for the door in a sea of chimps and gorillas. In the dark night outside of Mosh Tree, King hit the ground like a superhero. He was one of the first out of Mosh Tree, and he wasn't running for his life. He was on his way to solve the motherfucking problem. He was the silverback of the tribe after all. King looked into the dark night and charged in the direction of the War Store. An 800-pound motherfucking gorilla charging a 1,000,000-ton War Store. King's attention quickly changed to the 4 sets of red eyes he saw moving in the darkness. 2 sliding along the ground. Another 2 sets bounding next to them. King roared and changed directions. The eyes' vectors also changed directions to match his. He stopped and jumped into the air, slamming the ground as hard as he could when he landed. A display of strength. The eyes approached. King only saw the redness of their eyes. He had no idea what they actually were, and he didn't fucking care. He pounded the ground with his massive arms and roared again. To a human, it would have looked like motherfucking King Kong on the top of the Empire State Building. The small robot charged. Seeming like it hit a bump, it jumped into the air and whooshed. A volley of 3 taser darts. King dodged the volley like Neo in the motherfucking Matrix and snatched the small robot out of the air. He felt metal bending in his rage-filled grip. He looked at it. Machine! Just as he crushed the life out of the machine, it spurted 3 more taser darts into King's chest. He shook with electricity and dropped the dead machine as he fell backwards. The 3 other sets of eyes closed in on King's stunned body. Just as the bounding red eyes turned into a dark silhouette right on top of King, 2 gorillas slid in between them. It was Big Flea and Les. They roared in unison like 2 King Kongs. The tall robot stepped at them jerkingly and confidently, like stop-motion horror. Its long, spiky tip legs sticking into the dirt with each step. The other pair of tall and short were closing in fast. Big Flea did a short charge like the gorillas do to test their opponents, like he did in the battle against King earlier. He was seeing if he could scare off the robot, but it didn't. Big Flea was still the biggest motherfucking gorilla after all. Big Flea looked back at King, who was still down. King shook his head to try to shake out the cobwebs. Tall took a swing at Big Flea. Part of the robot's arm was now a blade edge. Or was it always and they never noticed? Big Flea leaned back and dodged it like a boxer. With the robot lurching at Big Flea, Les made his move from the other side and swung a massive two-handed bash at the robot's head and connected. Les had fought many times. He knew a big two-handed hit like that knocked out any living creature. This time, it hurt Les's hands more than it hurt the enemy. Les did a gorilla shuffle backwards, slightly confused, trying to get out of the robot's long reach. The tall robot swung one of its spiky legs at Les. He didn't expect a kick, but his shuffle backwards saved him, and Les dodged the attack. Les and Big Flea both noted that their enemy can attack with its legs now. The two massive gorillas and the tall robot danced, jockeying for position and looking for an opening. The robot's allies closed and would be there in a second. From behind the two, out of the darkness, King charged through and tackled the robot like a linebacker sacking a QB. Les and Big Flea instantly moved in behind him. The robot scrambled to get to its feet, but King laid its weight on it like a UFC fighter. Les grabbed one of the robot's arms and pulled. There was a spark, and some pieces came apart at the robot's shoulder. Big Flea grabbed on the same arm, and they both pulled, and with a chunky, ripping sound, the robot's arm dislodged from its socket. Les pulled and ripped the arm off completely. Long wires pulled out like veins. Les had seen incoming robots and swung the arm over his head in a downward motion at the small robot. The arm smashed into the ground and on top of the small robot, crushing it into the dirt. The War Store main cannon fired. It resembled a battleship's main cannons. The projectile howled and flew over the gorilla and robot fight with a cool-ass sound like it was out of a movie. The War Store main cannon hit Mosh tree, and it exploded from the inside in a brilliant explosion that lit up the night. Ape and monkey silhouette bodies flew like rag dolls in every direction with fire and debris. Les turned and saw his favorite place explode. For a short moment, he thought of all the amazing times they had there, especially the show they had just played. A second later, his mind came back to reality, ready to kick ass harder. Just in time to see the second tall robot lunging at him blade first. The tall robot's arm pierced Les's body and went all the way through, blood following the blade out of Les's back. The robot slid through Les's body until his face was right up next to Les's. Its face of strange red lights somehow grinned at Les. The robot reached one of its legs up and stuck the pointy tip of it into the bottom of Les's body and ripped him in half. Les's body fell in the dirt in two separate 400-pound pieces. Organs and intestines barely connected the two parts. Big Flea and King were pounding the other tall robot into the dirt. It didn't die like a living thing. It kept trying to get up, so they had to resort to ripping it into pieces. Both arms and legs dismembered, the robot's body jerked, and the stumps that used to be limbs flailed helplessly, and it wiggled on the ground like a motherfucking freaky torso. They looked to Les. It was too late. He was in two pieces. They looked around and didn't see the tall robot. They both easily noticed more pairs of red eyes in the distance. As they scanned around looking for the tall robot, there was a slicing sound through the air and Big Flea's head neatly separated from his body. Another slicing sound through the air and King rolled, his own reflexes saving his life by a millisecond. King rolled under Big Flea's still standing body. He used this to his advantage. He grabbed Big Flea's body and charged into the darkness at the tall robot. Gore spewed out of Big Flea's neck as his body compressed between King and the tall robot. It worked. The weight of two gorillas felled the robot. King knew this distraction would only last moments and jumped into the air, coming down with both feet on the robot's head, letting out a roar that could be heard for miles. King put all his weight and rage into the stomp. The robot's head crunched into a flat metal pancake. King saw the other red eyes speeding towards his tribe's tree. He also saw the giant mountain-like silhouette of the war store in his peripheral vision and put it on his kill list. He looked off towards the red eyes. King looked up at what used to be Mosh tree, now a big burning tree trunk. The explosion was so big that it was still falling from the sky. While running at full speed, King thought of all his tribe members that must be dead. And his anger shifted his running into another gear. He imagined stomping the head of 1,000,000 robots. Back inside the war store, the captain had one of his slight smiles. Those fucking shit monkeys. A supervisor approached him. Sir, we've lost 3 pairs of tall and shorts. What? 3 pairs? How? I'm not sure, the supervisor asked. They must have guns or something. Monkeys shooting guns? The captain said softly, but irritated. Bring up the video. One video showed King, Big Flea, and Les fighting the 2 sets of talls and shorts. The captain smiled when Les died and laughed out loud when Big Flea's head got chopped off. Then came the end of the video with the stomping of Tall's head. The video ended, but the last frame was a lot of static, some of King's foot, but it also showed King's face, full of rage, stomping the robot's head. Beer time. The captain slowly got up and even more slowly walked towards the main screen. The video was paused on the last frame. He got up to the video and looked at King in the eyes. He pointed to King's face on the screen and said, "Fuck you, you shit-eating," then he growled the last part, "animal." Next. Then he said calmly, popping another gray cube into his mouth from his pocket. The next video popped on screen. It was short, speeding through a crowd of monkeys and apes, unloading volleys of taser darts, tasing and electrocuting dozens of them. A gorilla then bounded into view and the screen cut out. The next video was from a tall. He was running behind the short, stepping on tased monkeys with his spiked feet. Bloody steps, killing 1 monkey or ape with each step. The captain liked that. Spiked feet. That was my idea. Haha. On the video, the tall robot's screen flickered, and the screen got partially covered with what looked like dirt. The tall robot stopped running and tried to shake the dirt off its face and looked up. From above the robot, hanging and standing on branches, were a bunch of monkeys and chimpanzees. They were pooping into their hands and throwing it at Tall. The robot raised its long, skinny arms to defend against the flying poop, but the screen was bombarded and went dark, covered in monkey diarrhea. A few moments later, there was grunting noises and the screen went to static. Each of those robots is $10 billion, the captain said. Without looking, he pointed at the supervisor behind him. Kill him with his own shit, like those monkeys. The guards rushed and grabbed the supervisor, dragging him off, kicking and screaming. Captain? A non-supervisor yelled out. The main screen flipped from a frozen video to a live shot in front of the war store. With Mosh Tree burning in the background, there was a wave of mostly gorillas charging the war store on the ground. King was leading the charge. A V formation followed behind him. King looked to his left and right. Get inside! He yelled before letting out one of his infamous roars that can be heard for miles. Roar! The captain looked scared for the first time since we'd seen him. He shuffled backwards, little scared clicks from his shoes. Do something, he yelled, looking back and forth. No one wanted to make eye contact with him. He was instantly becoming Gorman from that scene in Aliens where he loses it in the APC. Somebody, do something! Lock the doors! He looked back and forth and ran over to where he thought the pilot was. Run them over or something! That crew member wasn't the pilot, but no one said anything. The real pilot was a few crew members over, but he attempted to run them over anyways. The mountain of machines' massive tank treads began moving the earth below it, and it heaved into motion. Guerrillas swarmed the war store, leaping onto it from every direction, expertly navigating the massive tank treads, rotating gears like they were climbing a tree. Like they were gamers who had played this level 100 times. They were all over it like a swarm of ants taking an injured bee. All of the war store's instruments of war rendered useless. Kill him! Kill him! The captain said in a high-pitched, spoiled brat voice. He could have yelled, Mommy! With that voice. The tribe had broken into the war store. They knew what they were doing. King had 2 spider monkeys riding on him as he charged the war store. Sadly, neither of them were Jimmy. Another gorilla, Slash, had more spider monkeys. King and Slash climbed to a spot they knew. King hung from a machine gun barrel and kicked at a vent. It crumbled easily and the spider monkeys disappeared into it. The captain was standing in the cockpit, looking at the chaos on all the monitors around him. Return to base! Return to base! He was still scared and shitless. Hurry, hurry! Don't let those monkeys get us! The war store's treads changed, and the entire store shifted again as its weight began to turn. All of the gorillas that were on the outside had to grab on, and a few fell off. One gorilla fell past the main screen. The captain saw a straw and grasped at it. Oh, did you see that? Do that again! Do that again! Shake them off! The pilot tried to do as he said. He accelerated, then braked. Everyone in the cockpit flew forward, including the captain, who fell face first into a row of computers, smashing his nose. Ow! He yelled. He stumbled to his feet, and blood came from his nose. He grabbed at his face, and he saw blood on both of his hands. For a second, he looked like Jim Carrey, acting like he was going to faint. Except the captain almost did faint. Then the captain turned and started clicking towards the door, motioning to his guards to come with him. Just as he was almost out of the cockpit, 2 spider monkeys flew by, running past the door. Ah! He said. Oh, did you see that? Oh, kill them! Oh, kill those little shit monkeys! The guards ran into the hallway. By the time the guards turned the corner, spider monkeys were fiddling with the door at the end of the hallway about 50 feet away. The guards unleashed their guns, some sort of custom Ilosa assault rifle that resembled an M16. After the hail of bullets ended, one spider monkey lay dead on the ground. The other was halfway up the door, hanging onto something, his body riddled with bullet holes. The captain turned the corner just as the second spider monkey's body went lifeless. Ha ha ha! He yelled. As the captain yelled his little victory cheer, the second spider monkey's body went lifeless. As his body slid and fell, his little spider monkey arms finished the job and the door clicked open. A sliver of dark surrounded the door as it opened slightly into the war store. Close it! Close it! The captain pointed to his guards. They looked at each other for a second, but it seemed like the captain was pointing more at one on the right, so he went. The guard ran up towards the door, not trying to make noise. After a few seconds, the captain yelled, Go, you idiot! Faster! Then the guard ran for the door. The guard grabbed the door, and as he was closing it, he looked over his shoulder at the captain like, Look, I did it! I'm closing the door." Then the door was hit with a massive force from the outside and it swang in. It smashed the guard. The heavy weight of the door made a crunching sound as it crushed the guard's equipment and bones. The guard fell dead. The silhouette of a gorilla filled the doorway. The other guard fired into the doorway with his gun. The captain walked backwards, almost falling. Holding onto the walls as his safe reality escaped him. He scrambled backwards past the cockpit and motioned to all the crew members to get in the hallway. A few crew members did what he said. Others hoped the captain would die a torturous death. "Hurry! Hurry!" the captain yelled. He grabbed the last security guard by the collar, turned the corner, and clambered down the hall with guard in tow. At the end of the hallway was his office. "You stay here," he told the guard, and put him in front of his office. Then he took the guard's gun and entered his office, locking the door behind him. The now unarmed guard looked around and shook his head. King looked in the open doorway and stepped through. In front of him were 5 or 6 unarmed teenage crew members, looking at him in awe. Probably only one had clean pants now. He walked towards them, and they parted without words. Slash entered behind King, looking around. He found and took the M16 looking gun from the guard that King had killed with the door. King looked around the corner and saw the second guard standing there, looking confused, unarmed, in the hallway. Inside the captain's office, he was in the chair, back against the far wall. He was shaking and holding the M16 like an amateur, pointing it at the closed locked door of his office. He was on a speaker with Elosa HQ. "Hurry! Send reinforcements! Now!" The speaker squawked with static. A low voice said something about using tall and short. The next Warsword deployment was tomorrow. He bashed his fists on the desk. "Save me now!" There was a knock on the front door. He unloaded his gun at the door, holding the trigger down, yelling, "Fuck you, monkeys!" The door was littered with holes, and blood seeped through a few holes. The captain laughed. "Ha ha! You see that, monkeys? You want some more?" Then gunfire ripped through the door from the other side. The captain fell off his chair, scared and looking for cover behind his desk. He fired back. The door moved, then the door was kicked. It was riddled with holes and barely on its hinges anymore. The captain saw some fur through one of the holes and unloaded his M16 again. Blood sprayed in the air. The captain laughed again, "Ha ha!" and his M16 clicked when he pulled the trigger. Out of ammo. The door opened, and the fur he thought he saw was actually hair on the guard's head. The last guard dropped dead through the door as the door fully opened. King had to duck to enter the office door. The captain pulled the trigger. Click, click, click. "Fuck!" yelled the captain. He scrambled to open the desk and yelled into the speaker, "They're here! They're here!" slapping the button. "The fucking monkeys are here! Help me!" The king hovered over him, bared his teeth, and growled. The captain pulled a pistol out of his desk, swinging it at King. King caught his hand and squeezed, snapping his wrist in multiple places. The captain screamed in pain and yelled into the speaker, "The fucking monkeys are here! Ah! Hurry!" King grabbed the captain's face, kinda like how a grandma would hold a baby's face. Thumb on one side and fingers on the other. He growled, "I'm not a fucking monkey." King squeezed, stretching the captain's face skin and squishing his lips out. The captain pounded on King's arms fruitlessly. He tried to say something through his squished lips, but King squeezed slowly like a vice. Not in any hurry. The skin on the captain's face stretched to his maximum and began to tear around his jaw. The captain's eyes closed in agony and his mouth made an unintelligible noise. King could feel teeth popping out in the captain's mouth under his grip. Blood poured from the captain's jaw. King kept closing his vise. He felt lips separating from face. The ripping sound was loud enough he could hear it. The captain gurgled. King stopped squeezing and pulled away. With a terrible, terrible tearing sound, the captain's face slowly separated from his head. Tendons stretched, ripped, and snapped. Eyeballs stretched and snapped. King used his leg to hold the captain's body in his seat while pulling on his face as it separated from his body. Blood poured from the backside of the captain's face as it separated from his body. With a final pull, King ripped off the captain's face. His jaw was partially broken and loose teeth danced on his bloody tongue as his skinless face screamed and twisted. His eyes were still in his head, but without any eyelids. Blood poured over his eyes, painting his vision red. He saw his own face and tried to scream, but what came out was a loud gurgle. He wasn't dead, though. Blood was pouring from his forehead over his white, skinless skull of a brow. His nose was a bloody, bubbling black hole. King took his foot off the captain's chest, stood back, and held up captain's face. The captain kept screaming and gurgling. He reached up and touched his bloody mess that used to be his face and tried to stand up. Teeth fell out of his head as he stood up, and he wavered like a crazed movie monster. The captain yelled, hands up at his face as he stumbled around like a bloody Home Alone poster. King politely stepped out of the way as the captain stumbled by. He saw a reflection in a monitor and screamed over it maniacally. He tried leaving the cockpit. He had to walk down the hallway where his former crew members were gathered. He walked like a zombie through the hallway, holding onto the walls not to fall over, stopping to scream every few steps. Blood shooting out of his face. It was awkward for a few crew members. Their asshole boss, with his face ripped off, flailing around in front of them. None of them wanted to help, though. They all knew he was an evil motherfucking dick. A female member turned around, disgusted by the faceless monster. As he walked by, one of the crew members couldn't help it and busted out laughing. The captain stopped in front of the laughing crew member and looked at him. The crew member held in his laugh, barely. Then the captain let out a miserable and desperate scream. He stumbled towards the door again. He stopped screaming for a second, opened the outer door, stepped out, and started screaming again. As he stumbled out, someone cheered, "Fuck that guy!" Those were the last words the captain heard. He was standing out on the outer hallway at the top of the war store. Slash stepped through the doorway. The captain turned towards Slash and let out a new sounding scream. Slash had one of those M16 looking Delosa guns and let the captain stand there for a few long moments. And then he fired a burst, and the captain's faceless head exploded mid-scream. Brain brain flew out of the back of his head like a confetti cannon into the dark night behind them. The scream quickly descended back into a gurgle, and the body started to lose balance. A piece of brain slid out from his shattered skull like it was on a blood water slide and slapped into the walkway in front of him. The body flopped down next to it. King and Slash stood near the outer door at the top of the war store. Looking out into the night, almost their entire tribe was dead. Mosh Tree was gone. But on the other hand, now they had a war store.